Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. I'm so glad you're with us today to stay curious. We have a fabulous guest today who's one of our late additions to Shuttlefest, Mr. Jim Neihouse. Jim, welcome to Stay
Thank you.
Curious.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And over here, we have our good buddy, Tom Usiak, who's on this side of the camera instead of watching from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We enjoyed a good dinner last night with some of our space friends, but I'm excited to meet Jim Neihouse, though it's spelled, you might say Neihouse, like I did before he bumped me up the side of the head. And so
I've been called worse by better.
uh, Jim, I'm going to get to him my usual question about where you grew up and how you got into this in a minute, but you all know the dream is alive. IMAX movie. Of course you do, because I've got the most intelligent group of viewers on
Of course.
Facebook and YouTube out there. Well, this is one of the gentlemen that was involved with that project.
Yep.
And not only that, Neihouse trained more than 150 NASA astronauts. There's only 300 and some out there and 20 Russian cosmonauts on shuttle flights and space station expeditions, how to use a film camera. And of course, IMAX is you're well known for that. A Silver Snoopy Award winner, all kinds of accolades. But welcome. We are so happy that you're part of Shuttle Fest. As I put our first image up there, that'd be fine there, Marty, I guess. Shuttle Fest, of course, here will be over in 4 weeks. And we've got Eileen Collins, Don Thomas, Joe Tanner, and John Grunsfeld right there over there. And you know our EVA astronauts quite well,
Quite
right?
well. Yeah. John and I are good friends. Joe Tanner was on one of our space station flights. Trained him. Eileen, we were on her first flight, which was to Mir. And so she has some IMAX experience too. Don Thomas, the only one I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're all going to get to know you, and we have we've only got about 40 reservations left at $90. This is going to be an event that you're going to hear about years later, I predict, as Tom Usiak particularly has been instrumental in bringing us a lot of these guests, as has Mikey Haddad, level 4 NASA engineer that worked with Joe and John a lot on there. And this is how we've evolved over the years at our small Stay Curious program as well as Shuttlefest, Jim. So we're anxious to have you there.
Glad to be here. And we'll be there.
Let me turn that down on there. Wanted to say hi to Fox McCloud. And Man Space is Mitch Rothman's in Colorado, and he's a big supporter. Wait till you meet Mitch at Shuttle Fest. And Mark Thiel, happy Friday. Yes, finally made it to Friday. Steve Jokums is watching. You'll meet Steve. He's one of our VIP contributors to Shuttle Fest. And he's up in Fox Lake, Illinois. And Tom Celentano is up in Connecticut. He says, I must have seen Dream is Alive dozens of times, coming up on the 40th anniversary of its premiere.
Yeah. I'm actually just before Shuttlefest. I will be at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum for a 40th anniversary special program.
Wow.
At Dulles. Or yeah.
I suspect Tom Jones will be there.
Maybe, I don't know.
From in there. But well, before I have Jim give us a little thumbnail of who he is, I want to throw up there. Hope everybody lost a little sleep and got them some earth-filtered moonshine, as I call it. That is from my friend Dave Geibert with his Sea Star.
Oh.
Have you seen the little Sea Star automatic telescopes that are ranging? They're not even really a telescope. They don't even have an eyepiece that goes right to your smart tablet.
Yeah.
And this is with that. And then here's another beautiful picture by Gil Plummer, another astronomy buddy of mine. That's how to do it, Gil, with get that foreground with the palm leaves in it. And, you know, it's advertised as the blood moon, but really it's more like the copper moon. And I wasn't prepared to do a lot of photos last night. I'm going to show you that slide in a minute. But did you lose some sleep?
Yeah, I'm surprised I'm here. I
Well,
stayed
thank
up and
you.
shot it, and I wasn't real pleased with what I got, but it'll do. I'm never pleased with anything I shoot, so there's no big
Okay.
surprise there.
Yeah.
I'm my own worst critic.
And that's why you do good work. We don't pretend like, the best photographers I know, you know, uh, aren't satisfied.
No, no.
It's not that I'm a perfectionist either, but it's like doing it when I end Stay Curious. I'm usually walking out the door and saying, "Why didn't I ask him that? Why? Oh, I could have done that."
Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
But as
absolutely.
everybody's gotten to know me and how I work here at this museum, including Tommy here, uh, it's a lot on the fly and the last minute, and I probably couldn't do it any other way. If I've sat here prepared a half hour
Yep.
with my script and everything, and they've been some of the worst shows I've done, I think, on there. Uh,
Somebody's just got to go with the flow.
that's right. Daniel de Jong from the Netherlands. He's a pilot for Spirit. He's going to be at Shuttlefest. We have Europeans flying in for
Wow,
Shuttlefest.
that's
Okay.
great.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
great.
Tommy, how are you? Don't want to leave you out, and I
No,
want you to
no,
interject
no.
Anytime. You're just the eye candy here today,
That's
buddy.
right. This is. I'm so glad that Jim
I'm
could
his
come
arm
on
candy.
today and let some people that know a little bit about him and what he's done. And as soon as you mention the word IMAX, they know. They
They
know
know.
what that is,
They know what
and
that is.
be interested to hear what he has to say.
Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get involved in being a shutterbug?
Well, I grew up in a little town called Paris, Arkansas, and little 3,200 people in the town, and I was the yearbook photographer for years, for several years, and then thought, well, this is kind of fun, taking pictures. Maybe I'll go to school, learn how to do that. I was interested in the space program and thought, well, maybe I can work for NASA and take pictures in space, sort of stuff, and that didn't completely work out the way I wanted it to, but eventually I got around to NASA and with IMAX and went to school for photography at in Santa Barbara, California,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Brooks Institute of Photography, and one of the top schools at the time back in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it just kind of when I fell in with IMAX right after I graduated school and worked with the founder, the inventor of IMAX, Graham Ferguson, for I don't know, for nearly 40 years after
Graham
that.
Ferguson.
Graham Ferguson, yeah.
We got some new people out there. We're not going to pretend that everybody knows what an IMAX
IMAX.
is. So explain what an IMAX
Well,
means.
IMAX is the world's largest motion picture format. Graham
What's the acronym stand for?
uh, that Graham would always answer that question as it doesn't stand for anything, but come to find out, it was image maximum is what they came up with, and they didn't like the way that sounded, and they just sort of contracted it and made
Mm-hmm.
IMAX out of it. So
Big
that's
film in the old days.
big
and-
film, 65 millimeter film running sideways. For the photographers out there, each frame of IMAX is about the same size as a like a Pentax 6x7.
Okay.
So it's
Bigger than the
it's
Hasselblad.
bigger, it's wider than the Hasselblad. We use Hasselblad lenses, large format lenses on it.
That Zeiss is pretty good.
Yeah,
glass.
pretty good glass. And as we progressed, we actually Zeiss would custom make glass for us through their facility Elcan in Canada.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's how I ended up being in the space, involved with the space program. And no, I haven't flown in space. Everybody always asks me that. So
Have you done a zero G?
I've done zero G. Yeah,
The plane
yeah,
thing in there.
flew with the Russians in their zero G plane, and with the zero G company here in Florida at one time.
Those of you in the space community, you're married to a person who's very influential. Mrs. Leslie Vach became your wife. She's a NASA Public Affairs Specialist at Kennedy Space Center. And
That's how we met.
is that right?
That's how we met. Yeah.
That's good.
Making Dreamers Alive. She was our person to take us out, and I would say escort, but that usually doesn't sound too good. She would take us out.
Chaperone.
Chaperone, yeah. make sure we didn't kill ourselves or hurt the flight hardware whenever we made IMAX movies.
And I enjoyed talking to her just a little bit ago. And yes, we will see Leslie on a future Stay Curious podcast. She, by the way, hadn't given a shout out to my co-producer Marty Winkle. Hey Marty, how you doing? Say hi on that UCX family microphone that he and his brother bought us.
Yeah. Hi, Mark. Hey, Jim. Tom.
Hey.
Nice seeing you guys.
Who was the astronaut du jour today at Kennedy Space Center, and how crazy was that place today?
It was Terry Wilcott, and it was fairly crowded. It's I guess spring
Terry
break
Wilcott.
must still
I
be
know
going
Terry.
on, but he was he's such a nice guy. Like almost all the well, I should say all the astronauts are really great people.
Yeah, they are. We got
Absolutely.
one. We have one we call Grumpy, but I won't tell who that is.
I didn't want to mention that.
No, we don't. But
I think we could probably come up with this whole 7 dwarfs in the astronaut program, quite honestly.
Not too bad out of 350 of them. Yeah, Terry. I'm gonna try and get out and see Terry tomorrow afternoon. This is something that Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex does well.
Yeah.
Have access
It
to
is.
an
It's
astronaut
really nice.
twice a day for free. They give a talk, then you can get an autograph and a picture for free.
Right.
And I think it means so much. And some of them that keep coming back, I wonder why why they don't have to do this, like Kathy Thornton and Tom Jones and so forth. But
I found they really like to share the experience, like everybody else, they like to talk to people that are interested in what they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of it. And share. I know a lot of them like to share their experience of looking at the Earth from space, and understanding how fragile a planet it really is.
And like our museum, inspire the next generation to be
inspire the
involved in
next
space.
generation.
And as I've told a lot of young people, you all think you have to be a rocket scientist or an astronaut. No, you can be a photographer. You can be the thing that NASA needs the most really is security people and janitors. Keep things clean a lot.
Yeah.
But you what other things are out of the box that people might think to work out there?
Well, my son is a networking specialist, so he's been in charge of keeping a lot of the networks going out there.
Computers,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah, all sorts of things that you don't. HVAC personnel, you got to keep the place air conditioned and the clean rooms ventilated and all that stuff working.
well, I'm going to put up some of the movies and things that Jim has been involved in. Looks like I misspelled blue on Blue Planet. I see right there. And I love your little. I looked you up on Facebook.
You like my AI headshot?
Is that your AI? I did. But I love better was Jim was. You look at some people's profile that are on Facebook, and for a language, Jim put Pig Latin, and I laughed.
Ixnay on the Latin.
That's right. It's Pig Latin, where you put take the first letter off another word.
Yeah.
Ixnay.
Ixnay.
Yeah.
On the
And
Ixnay.
Marty, we've got a question already for Jim on the shoot there. Let's hear from Michael Bruno.
Mark, why don't you read it? I'm trying to get the names.
Oh, okay.
straightened
Michael
out here.
Bruno is up in Ontario, Canada,
Yay.
and getting thawed out up there. And he says, how big and heavy is the IMAX camera film reel?
The film reel, for years, the film that we put in the camera, 65 millimeter tall and 1,000 feet long.
1,000
The,
feet long.
the,
Wow.
the, that much film, 3 minutes worth of film, weighs 10 pounds. So we knew that 3 minutes is not much. So we eventually developed magazines that would go 2,400 feet. For space, for some of our
Half a mile almost of film.
cargo bay cameras, we put 2,400 feet, 2,700 feet in the 2D camera and 5,400 feet in the 3D camera. And they were all special made, had to go to Kodak and in their processing facility weld pieces of film together in the dark in one of their special machines to create those. It's the longest single rolls of motion picture film ever created.
A mile long.
A mile of film.
And
yeah.
how many missions was that used on?
Or
Or is it still being used? Well,
no,
don't use film
we
anymore,
flew.
but-
That was for space station construction, and for phase 1, I think we flew 7 flights with it. So it is a pretty specialized camera. And so it's right now, one version of it is in the Smithsonian, but the 3D version is just kind of sits in a box these days. So if anybody wants to make a 3D space movie, we got the great cameras for you. Yeah.
There you go. And I'm just getting to know Jim. We'll have him back on other shows, but he'll fill in a lot of stuff for you to come to Shuttle Fest there. But I did want to kind of just reel off some of your um, accomplishments here. I guess you're cinematographer on all of these.
I cinematographer, cameraman. Yeah.
A Beautiful Planet, Hubble
Yeah.
3D, NASCAR 3D, Forces of Nature. What era was that NASCAR? The good era?
That
with
was the last
the
year.
Earnhardts and
That was the
Levanis
last year of the Winston Cup.
Oh, okay.
So it was 2000.
Bill Elliott.
Yeah, Bill
And,
Elliott. And
Roving Mars, Space Station 3D, Pulse, A Stomp Odyssey. I've seen Jane Goodwill's Wild Chimpanzee several times. That won some awards, I
Yep.
see.
Yep.
Bears.
Yep.
Ocean Oasis, winner of the Widescreen Film Festival Panda Award in 2002 from Jackson
Hole. Yeah.
Wildlife, Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Very famous spot. India, Kingdom of Tiger. You did a Michael Jordan in IMAX.
In IMAX. His last year playing 98, we filmed all the playoffs, and when they won the championship that year, the producer came to me that night and he says, "I feel like I just won a $15 million bet because they won." Because you start making this movie, you're spending millions of dollars to make the movie.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't win, it's not going to be as much. If the Bulls don't win, it's not as much film.
Yeah.
But I think Michael, knowing that it was his last dance, as the other documentary was called, figured that I've got to put my heart and soul in this, make sure we win this, and I go out on top, and that's what he did.
Well, many of us know Michael Jordan, considered one of the greatest basketball players, arguably. But when I watch sports shows, they pretty much just call him Mike. And so, in personal interaction with him, can you give us peel away the curtain a little bit?
He is very private, and we actually ended up on a 1-to-1 with him, very limited time.
Okay.
I think we had a day with him that we did interviews and some pickup shots and some special effects shots. But very nice guy. I one of my stories is I lost $100 to him. He's
notorious for betting, so he couldn't resist betting. But
he does a kids camp every summer in Chicago, and we were filming him at this kids camp, and they were just kind of fooling around on the court, and he was at half court shooting half court shots and had missed 2 or 3 in a row, and said, "Mike, $100 says you missed this one," and swish. So it was worth $100 to lose $100 to be able to tell that story. Yeah.
Olympic glory. What Olympic year was that?
That was 98 as well. I'm not a real sports guy, and in 98 I ended up at the Olympics, at the NBA
Where were
playoffs.
those Olympics? I don't. Was that
Nagano, Japan. It was
oh.
Winter Olympics. Tara Lipinski was the figure skater sensation at the time. But I ended up at the Olympics, NBA Finals, the World Cup, the Indy 500, and a Cubs game at Wrigley Field.
Man,
and in less than 9 months. And,
that's a great.
Not a real sports guy here,
right? Well, we've got certainly most of you seen Blue Planet, the IMAX Hall of Fame inductee in 2003. Rolling Stones at the Max. I think I've seen that. Of course, The Dream is Alive. We'll talk maybe more about that than anything. You did something on your home state, Arkansas, Center of Attraction. You won a big Academy Award nomination for the eruption of Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
And those of you too young to remember that, that was that was an epic event.
A big
for
boom.
sure.
Yeah. We I'd been working with the director, George Casey, and he was a volcano freak. He loved shooting volcanoes, and we'd done a underwater film, The Great Barrier Reef, previously. And Sunday morning, May 18th, 1980, he calls me up and says, "You want to go to Mount St. Helens with me?" It just blew up, And I said, okay, let's go. And so we ran around for a couple of weeks, just he and I and one other guy toting this big IMAX camera that weighed about 90 pounds around and bumming rides on National Guard Huey helicopter search and rescue missions and all that fun stuff. And we were the first IMAX film to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Short Documentary.
Is that?
Yeah. So
Well, who'd you lose to? Do you remember?
I don't even remember.
Did you go to the award?
No.
In the suit and tux and tie and all?
I'm a member of the Academy, but since then, no, the lowly cinematographer doesn't get invited to that one unless you're nominated specifically.
All right. Some of the space ones, Destiny in Space.
Yep.
What was that about?
Well, that was our looking toward the future of space exploration film. It was Dream is Alive was so successful. Lockheed Martin sponsored Dream is Alive.
Yeah, I remember that
Yeah,
one now.
yeah.
Destiny in Space
Yeah.
coming out after that.
We
yeah.
did Destiny in Space, Blue Planet, Blue Planet, then Destiny in Space, because Dream is Alive was so successful. Lockheed thought it was great.
Mission to
deal.
Mir, of course, is a cool
We
one
jumped
there.
in there. did
Uh,
that.
well, I skirted over the Rolling Stones. Did you get to interview them one-on-one, Mick and
I was
Keith
on
and so
stage
on?
with Mick Jagger in
All
Wembley
right.
Stadium.
Oh, us baby boomers are jealous of that, right?
Absolutely.
I learned very quickly you don't get in between Mick and the audience with a really big camera, or he gives you a really death will come to you soon look.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it was good. It was pretty cool hanging out with Ronnie Wood and a guy named Keith.
Yeah, Keith
Uh,
yeah. Well, that's. I mean, look at the. Just not space here. You've got Hail Columbia, of course, about the Columbia,
the first Columbia flight.
flight. To be an astronaut. What's that about?
I don't know. I think it's about to be an astronaut.
Right.
It was a large screen film. It wasn't IMAX, but it was basically sort of Dream is Alive-ish, but a little bit more in depth into what it took to become an astronaut and fly. So they spent a
Okay.
lot of time with the astronauts at Houston.
Yeah, and I put some
And
other
training.
ones up there to show you there that they're at the bottom there. The Darwin on the Galapagos. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah,
You got to
that
go
was
out to the
interesting.
Galapagos Islands?
I didn't get to go to Galapagos.
Okay.
I did basically what was a reenactment of Darwin's journey on board the Beagle. So we had a history-specific, correct
Mhm.
sailing ship that we converted into the Beagle and spent several weeks filming at sea with them, and it was kind of fun.
I don't know, 1980. Is that about the year 1980? Was
Yep.
just.
It was Mount St. Helens. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah,
It's the end
yeah,
of
yeah,
Mount
yeah,
St.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
Race the Wind.
That was 1986, 87 was the America's Cup
Oh,
challenge.
America's
and,
Cup Challenge.
was the
Okay.
first was the first challenge after America had lost the cup for the first time. So it went to the Australians, and so we went to Perth in Australia and filmed America taking back the America's Cup, basically.
We've already show you how intelligent our group is. Just watch and stay curious. Tom Celentano says the music from Hail Columbia in The Dream is Alive was great. And Steve Jokums up in Illinois says it was composed by Mickey Erb and Mara
Mickey-
Beth Solomon.
Mickey and Mary Beth. Yeah, Mickey has left us since then, but Mary Beth is still alive and kicking, and she would. I'll give her a shout out. She's a great lady. They did some wonderful composing for all of our space films. My favorite, I think, is Dream is Alive. The score for Dream is Alive.
And of course, Steve Jokum is bragging the Hubble 3D is incredible.
Thank you.
Masterwork in 3D photography. That leads me into this gentleman's personal photography I pulled off of, and then we'll talk more about the IMAX and your questions. And because you know our John Grunsfeld well, who's going to
Yeah.
be at Shuttle Fest, and Joe Tanner. I mean, it's just going to be.
That'll be
This is
fun.
why we created it, not so much also for you to see these people you work
Oh,
with
yeah,
and
yeah,
friends. So
yeah.
that's the magic that we
Yeah.
hope happens at Shuttle Fest, where
I was-
everyone can go up and say, "You're Tom Usiak." Oh my gosh!
I
You
was
got-
John's date last year for the Hall of Fame
Oh, were ya?
induction from Marcia Ivins.
Okay.
So I was John's
Yes.
plus one.
Yep. Marcia Ivins and
Marcia's a great friend of mine.
oh, is
Yeah,
she?
Yeah.
But when I talked to Marcia at last year's Astronaut Hall of Fame induction and told her, you know, when you have time, we have a video podcast, and the main that we like being the main emphasis of it is keeping the shuttle memory alive.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and says, "So somebody ought to." That NASA TV never shows anything about the shuttle. That's what Marcia Ivins
Yeah.
said. To
Oh,
me.
I know. She's very outspoken.
Yeah.
I think that's why I like her so much. But
yeah.
I talk to her quite often, and
Really, do you?
Yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah.
was a little. I don't. You can't read them in that long, short of a
Yeah.
period of time. But she was a little. She liked the attention, but she's not used to that kind of attention.
yeah, she doesn't like the attention.
Yeah.
What she says, she doesn't like the attention.
Yeah, she
but
really
I
didn't
think
like
she
the
does like
attention.
the attention. She was all pissed off because John had nominated her for Hall of Fame, and I don't want this, I don't want to do this, but then she was all into it when she
Yeah.
got here.
Well,
So,
5 flights and who she was on there. Go ahead, Marty's got a question on that UCX family microphone.
Here we have 2 questions from Homemade Documentaries. Where is the IMAX film that was shot on orbit currently being stored? And the second question is, who owns the copyright to it? Is it public domain?
That's an interesting. I get that question a lot. The storage, most of it, the flight footage, especially the stuff that we didn't make into the movie, the stuff that hit the cutting room floor, I think is in a salt mine somewhere out west.
Really?
Yeah, there's a huge film
Oh,
storage
I mean, they stored it
facility
there. Okay.
in a salt mine because it's the proper temperature and the proper humidity
Uh-huh.
to keep things, because it's archival.
That's
it's
where Clark
definitely-
Gable is.
Yeah,
and-
yeah. And I think Walt Disney may be buried there. I don't know. But as far as the copyright, anything that was shot on orbit, I believe, and don't take this to the bank, but what I understand is anything that was shot on orbit by the astronauts became public domain within several years of the release of the film. So since our last film was in 2016, almost everything shot in space for an IMAX production is available in public domain. Now, I don't know who owned specifically who owns the copyright. Is a combination between, depending on which film, the Smithsonian, Lockheed Martin, Warner Brothers, and possibly Disney, plus IMAX. So you've got a lot of clearances to go through if you want to use it for a commercial sort of thing. But I do believe most of it is available. It's kind of expensive if you want to get down into the original stuff, because you've got to take that 65 millimeter negative and have it scanned frame by frame into the digital world. And so they don't give you that. You have to pay for that.
We're here talking to Jim Neihouse, cinematographer. He's taught over 150 astronauts how to use a camera in space. Tom Usiak sitting beside him there. How'd you guys first meet each other?
I gotta think. I think.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
You just showed up on Facebook one
You know,
day.
it might have been. It could have been in the dome. It could have been.
No, I was
you know.
a stringer for AP back in the day. STS before the Challenger accident.
Mm-hmm.
After I got married, she was living here and had a real job, and I was a freelance filmmaker, so I moved here. And Phil Sandlin hired me as a stringer, and I shot for AP for a while. And that may have been when I ran into you.
I'm sure it had to be
Yeah.
at one of the KSC
One of those-
grounds.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe
we
out
got
on remote.
We
getting-
bumped arms, and
maybe out
elbows. I'm sure.
remote scratching our mosquito bites, and I don't remember.
No, it's too many years and too many beers. Yeah.
Well, we love to have a new a friend now in homemade documentaries. They've got a couple other comments there. I'll let Marty mention there, and also we are not ignoring the fact that we do have a space flight, a crewed space flight, and to launch at 7:03. And Fox McCloud says all four of the Crew 10 astronauts are on board
Good.
Endurance and ready to rock and roll. And we're going to just enjoy it from about 3 blocks away. We're actually sitting about probably 11 miles from the launch pad here
Yeah, yeah,
in our
just about
museum
it.
in here, in there. And go ahead, Marty, with a couple questions there for the gang.
Yeah, just got to find it now. Way to go.
Mitch
Oh,
Rothman
yeah, Mitch
says
Roth-
he's been to the salt mine. It's in Kansas, not far from
Oh.
the Cosmosphere. Okay.
And Mike Bruno's asking, have any IMAX films been converted to digital? And if so, how many bytes do they consume?
Yes, several of the films have been converted to digital. I am a member of the Giant Screen Cinema Association, and one of our
Giant Screen
Giant
Cinema.
Screen Cinema Association.
cool
It's all
name.
the big movie theaters consortium of those guys and filmmakers. I'm on the board of directors, and we have a committee right now that's working to make sure we get our top films, the most important films, digitized, so that we will be able to share them with people in the future, because film projectors are getting very difficult to find these days. If it weren't for Chris Nolan and his films and his contracts demanding that his films be shown on film in IMAX theaters, we wouldn't have many.
And tell us who Chris Nolan is.
Chris Nolan is a Hollywood director. Did a Batman film or two, and did
Okay.
Interstellar, and did Oppenheimer, and what
There you
else?
go.
Inception. A few of those. Oppenheimer won a few Academy Awards
Yeah.
last year.
Absolutely. We've got Elaine Adahara. She's in South Africa. Actually,
wow.
we figured out watching us here. Cliff Watson will be waking up on Saturday. He's on the east coast of Australia.
Oh, wow.
It was Friday night, yeah. But so he's been out partying all Friday. He's waking up Saturday.
Saturday morning.
We'll see Cliffy in here in a
I'd
minute.
hate to see me, and
He's sat here and there and there. Yeah, let's look at some of Jim's personal photography to kind of warm you up. Tommy, if you want to comment on some of this too, sitting there. Here's I'm going to show you some stuff I pulled off your Facebook that I showed you before. Comments as you will.
That's just a recent launch. I think that was the Intuitive Machines lander launch from down south. I stole Michael Seeley's shot. He found that sailboat, and so I went and found it and decided to photo. I borrowed his inspiration to do that. And so
Very
yes,
nice.
it's
Very
a-
nice.
I don't know. It's about a 5-minute exposure.
I was going to ask you
Yeah,
how long.
about 5 minutes, and I should have scooted over to the left just to see. I don't like my own stuff.
Yeah, next time
I
you
should
do
have
it,
scooted
get
a
away
little
from the
bit more
bow.
to the left and have a little
Yeah.
bit more clearance on the bow.
Yeah.
But that's how picky I am.
A single exposure.
That's a single exposure. Yeah.
Yes, I love single exposure photographers.
And most everything I do is single exposure. If it's not, I will always say this is not.
And I'm going to get to homemade documentaries. It's got some good questions there to kick off more talk on there. Now, there's an unusual streak shot for you. Where you what'd you do there to get the?
That's multiple exposures because it was still semi-daylight. I couldn't do a long exposure.
I got you.
Long streak, so I did short. I think those are 30-second shots, and then composited. This is, I don't know, there's probably 40 shots in that, because you can see the return of the booster and then the landing over here.
For you non-photographers, it's like finger painting. You open up the shutter and you're moving.
Yep.
The light is moving across there.
That's how the
Everything's
streaks work.
steady. That's how the streaks work.
Yeah.
Takes a little technique. It took me a while to get used to it, but it's basically a
Got it.
low ISO, a high f-stop, and a long exposure.
Long exposure, and some, with this case, a lot of Photoshop work, because you're layering all those images on top of one.
And we'll go to the next one.
Maybe.
Where is my next one, Marty? I'm not being advanced, Marty. You advancement there. There we go.
There we go. That was that's Ponce Inlet. That's the tallest lighthouse in Florida.
Up north of us here.
North of us. We went up there. I have a group of friends that we all go out and shoot launches together. And
Okay.
one guy, Jim, is from Allentown, Pennsylvania. He comes down in the winter and he always shoots. He's going out tonight to shoot. Terry Watkins is a photo student of mine for years. But we all went up to Ponce to shoot this launch, Crew 10 launch that got scrubbed. So we're sitting up there at Ponce, and here it got scrubbed. So I looked over and I said, "Oh, the moon's up, so let's shoot some of the moon." And
Well, there's a shot of the moon.
there's a
With
shot
the
of
Falcon Heavy.
That is one picture. That is one frame. That is not a composite. That is not AI.
Is your head getting hot, Tom? On there.
Love
it. Yeah, on there.
That actually is in
Our friend Carlton Bailey was one of the first ones to shoot the moon, a rocket going in front of the moon
yeah.
25 years ago. And it was on the cover of the
Adweek.
Adweek. Or I thought it was the Colcom was editor of
Aviation Week.
Aviation.
Aviation.
Yeah.
You said Adweek, Aviation
Adweek.
Week.
I said Adweek.
Oh, Adweek,
I've
Adweek.
always called it that.
But
Aviation Week.
not an easy shot. And man, to balance the Maria on the moon, I always say, too many people have the moon looking like a flashlight in the
Yes,
sky, and you
yeah.
got to balance that.
Yeah, you have to balance that, and
And see that Tycho Brahe's, this
Yeah.
crater right over there.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Excellent shot there. And
So
then
you test exposures of the moon to
yeah,
know.
yeah, and it's the same shot basically, except the subject's moving slower.
yeah, a Ferris wheel.
Yeah,
Look at
that's
the
the,
people inside. That's cool.
That's the Orlando Eye,
Oh, okay.
and this was inspired by Red Huber. I steal all my shots.
Okay.
I'm not going to be Red's
Imitation's the best compliment.
That's right.
Sometimes in there.
Red
so.
did this shot, and I liked it. So I that was my second or third attempt to get it. And
We're getting away from things in the sky. I know some people that love Mingos,
the
like Connie
flamingos.
McDaniel.
Yeah.
And,
That's Brevard Zoo.
Really?
Yeah.
Just in the zoo.
That's a nice little zoo out there.
It
really
is a nice zoo. They've got a wonderful little
Yeah.
trip down the river, and you can feed those giraffes right up front.
Yeah, I had a
And,
photography student who wanted to go shoot at the zoo, and so we went out one day and just shot pictures, and it was kind of overcast, and it was a nice light, and
So you teach photography classes?
I
or
do a lot of
one-on-one?
private lessons,
Mhm.
workshops, things like that. Yeah,
I love this. When I saw this on
the
Facebook,
meerkat.
I went back and it's just such an adorable face, but the dirt on the
Yeah.
face there, and the fact that you got a low f-stop like 4 or something there
Oh yeah,
to make
yeah,
the background
yeah.
go out.
Keep
is,
it all fuzzy in the background.
Yeah.
That's another shot I stole from a.
Out the zoo?
I borrowed. Yeah, it's at the zoo. Another photography student of mine had shot the meerkats, and I saw these shots. And
Now-
okay, well, let's see.
Now, when a photographer can take some ordinary, everyday object and make you go, wow, that's a photographer.
Yeah, Scotch
right there.
tape loves that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a photographer there. Which polarizing lens?
That's a tape dispenser laying on a sheet of polarizer film, and then a polarizer on the lens, which is called a polariscope, is the technical term for it. One of my majors in photography school was industrial scientific, and this was a technique that we learned then. And
Well, I was an untrained photographer that paid my bills for about 15 years, carrying a camera around.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when I see stuff like this, I'm going, really, why should I even pick up a camera when you
But
know this kind of stuff? But
this is
it's cool. It's cool that you could take an
Yeah.
everyday object, and that's really
one of
challenge.
the reasons you do this is, if you see right here, this shows that there's stress in that plastic where it's called birefringence.
Oh,
all that comes together in a much closer. They're
Biofringes.
spaced out further at the top, so there's not as much stress on it. But right there where that curve, that plastic is,
Yeah.
it shows where the stress in the plastic is, and
Oh.
all sorts of things you will photograph like this. You've seen this probably in an airplane window when you see like the rainbow kind of the window as you're looking out toward the north sky, and that's
Right.
because of the plexiglass in the window, and the north sky is polarized. So it's
What do you think of these images?
They're amazing. Amazing.
But you know, you're a photographer too, and your brother, and everybody finds their own little niche. Like I knew a photographer that worked in one of the furniture shops in North Carolina, one of the big furniture head. And that he just photographed furniture all his life, you know, and it's a technique. I also know photographers that Eckert sends them a box, you know, used to, you know, a product, and you shoot the product
Right.
and send it back on there.
the
It's
food. The food photographers are the guys that really make the bucks.
very-
They have their own stylists that style the food. And,
Funny you
yeah,
should say
yeah.
that. In the newspaper heydays, my favorite newspaper day was Wednesday, because that's when the food section came out, and I loved looking at the photographers, and I would copy their pictures there.
yeah,
Food
yeah.
photography really fascinates me. You know, take an Oreo and shoot an Oreo, you know, or a stack of Oreos or whatever. It's just very very
Most of the food that you see photographed, you would never eat.
no, you would. Particularly the ice cream is Crisco.
Crisco.
I've seen some of
yeah,
that. No,
shaving
you-
cream.
yeah, no, you wouldn't. And it's some it's colored and stuff like that.
Motor oil on it.
Also, you know, a plate of, you know, you've seen a few selfies of people's food
Oh, yeah.
that they're
Yeah.
eating, right,
Yeah.
on there. And when you see it in professionally, maybe a third of the plates shown, you know,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
still know what
Yeah,
what you're eating there.
Yeah.
So, a couple more brag book pictures from Jim Neihouse here. This is a picture that I took the lunar eclipse that I showed yesterday in May above the A up there, and it worked out
Oh,
pretty
okay.
cool.
Yeah.
In there, coppery there, but I've not gone over there to shoot a streak because I just don't take. I want to be where the action is
Yeah.
with the
Oh,
people
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's our famous Apollo monument there.
I've done streak shots with most all the monuments out there.
Oh, have you?
And I like I mean, this is the best, and that was another.
Gemini monument would look good.
Yeah,
I have to
yeah.
check that out one day.
That was another lunar. That was probably oh shoot, that was just recent too. The one before Intuitive Machines.
Okay. Oh, really? Recent one. Well, let's get some
anyway,
questions out there. Let me go to homemade documentaries here, Marty. He thanks you very much for your information. The IMAX stock is very hard to track down and very much a mystery versus a 16 millimeter onboard film, which is all very well documented. And then he says, I personally would love to see the cutting room floor rejected footage converted to digital and distributed one day.
I would too. Yeah. Yeah.
And then my very last question, and I'm sorry, but I've been interested in this for a very long time. The IMAX films were fairly short at around 50 minutes. How much footage was ultimately rejected? Great questions, and thank you for being our new friend here on Stay Curious, Homemade Documentaries.
Fortunately, the astronauts made pretty good filmmakers, which was a double-edged sword for me. I'd love to have flown to shoot this stuff, but I didn't get to, so I got to train them. And if I didn't train them good, they'd fire me. So I had to train them good, you know. So what the footage we got back from space, a lot of the footage we would use 60 to 80% of the footage shot on a flight.
All right.
One because
Which sounds like a lot compared to a Hollywood film.
Yeah, Hollywood. You know, I think Chris Nolan, one of their films that he's shooting now, I think they shot 45 minutes of film in one day, which is more than we would shoot on an entire film, space film in space. So it's probably, and I know it's more than 45 minutes. He shot 45,000 feet, so 45 times 3, whatever that is, 2 hours
Mhm.
roughly of
150
footage
minutes,
in
yeah.
one day, and we were lucky to get 10 minutes of film on one flight, so or 10 rolls. 10 rolls is 30 minutes, so there's not a lot there. So every frame was accounted for, and we would fly basically a shopping list of shots. Okay, we'd like this, would like this, would like this, and knowing that, okay, well, something's going to happen in the dark because they never stay on timeline. Things happen. They have to fly the shuttle, get busy, miss stuff. So we'd always oversubscribe. We'd have 2 hours of footage for 30 minutes of film, something like that. But
Well, I've got kind of maybe a dumb question here, but following up on homemade documentaries, just like, I mean, people would love to see the rejected film of astronauts in space and spacewalks and stuff like that, just like the outtakes of the Beatles recording
Yeah,
sessions
yeah.
or Stones or something like that. Who owns that? Who would make money off of it? Is it an IMAX corporation?
Well, again,
This is NASA's property? What?
if it's shot in space, becomes public domain eventually, and that's in theory through NASA, but you really have to go through IMAX to get to the footage. And that's, like I was saying before, if it hasn't been scanned and if they haven't kept the 30, because before there was digital, we would print the 35 millimeter, the 65 millimeter. We would use an optical printer and reduce it to 35 millimeter so we could show it on its standard 35 millimeter. And that's what you would edit on, would be the 35 millimeter print down. So usually that gets destroyed because nobody wants to keep 35 millimeter film sitting around because it's not anywhere near the quality of IMAX. And so usually that goes in the trash. But the 65 millimeter space footage is all stored. I think most of it that isn't in whatever isn't in the salt mines is at the IMAX facility in Los Angeles.
Okay. We'd love to see it out there. And homemade documentaries, you may email me if you want to contact you. And sounds like they might be interested in doing some of that themselves. To get a hold of me is marq@americanspacemuseum.org. Fox McLeod says the hatch is being closed on Crew 10. So things are
Yay.
starting to ripen up a little bit here on a beautiful Florida evening for that 7:03 launch. Marty, go ahead with a comment or question there.
Yeah, Mitch Rothman is asking, Jim, what camera did you use to capture that Apollo Monument streak image?
I shoot on Canon cameras. So I think that is a Canon 5D 5D SR, which is the 50 megapixel
50 megapixels
camera.
wow.
The big one.
Which it's an old
Wow.
camera. I mean, it's almost old camera. It's 5 years old, 6 years old, something like that.
I managed
Yeah.
a Ritz camera. I felt like a spy came out of the cold to manage a Ritz camera, and during the film to digital transition,
right.
and selling 8 megabyte
Yeah.
cards and that's it's just amazing how memories just create.
Oh, it's crazy.
Good question, Mitch. Hope you and your wife Paula are doing well. Mitch of Man Space is also behind the movement, Jim, to make July 20th a federal holiday.
Oh, okay.
Calling it Moon Day,
Moon
where
Day.
Apollo 11 launched. And he's actually headed to Washington and has got 9 appointments with congressmen and senators
Yeah.
that are interested in this, at least hearing
That's
about.
Jim, I have a question. In the beginning of the movie Dream is Alive, when after the VAB scene is gone, you have an approach to runway 15
Yep.
over here.
Yep.
What was that flown in, and who was behind? Were you behind the camera on that?
I was behind the camera, yes.
Okay.
That was shot. That's a combination. It's the first actual landing. That was
First landing at KSC. Yes.
KSC. So the shots you see of I think it's Challenger. Maybe?
Yeah, Challenger.
Challenger coming in. That when you see the orbiter, that's shot there. But the approach stuff is all shot with a Learjet.
Okay.
And we built a nose mount to put the camera on the nose of a Lear 25
Okay.
that belonged to Clay Lacey. Anybody that knows aerial photography will know Clay Lacey. He does tremendous work. At that time, he was the man to go to. He's retired now, but Clay had a fleet of planes. He had a system called Astrovision and did all the Hollywood movies, did commercials. But excuse me, we put the plane, the camera in the nose of the Learjet. Clay was flying, but we had an astronaut in the right seat of the Lear with him.
Right.
Thank you. And we didn't fly the exact speed of the approach that the shuttle did. We were, I think, about 10 knots slower because Clay didn't think he could pull up at the bottom. But we went up to 15 or 20,000 feet, put the gear out and full flaps and turned the engines off basically, and did this 19-degree dive at the runway and flew that, I don't know, 5 or 10 times. And we'd pulled all the seats out of the Lear. I was sitting in the very back with the camera controls, running the camera.
Well, I was going to ask you, did an astronaut fly the approach? But you said the other guy did. But there was one right there, so he could tell you if your pitch angle, your pitch attitude was right, and you were seeing the runway the way that he probably saw it many times in the STA. We undercranked the camera a little bit, which you normally shoot at 24 frames per second to get normal motion and project at 24 frames a second. But if you shoot slower, it speeds things up. So we shot that, I think, at 20 frames a second to compensate for the fact we weren't going as fast as the shuttle did.
Ooh,
so we
that's
tried to be to be as authentic with it as we possibly could. And
talking about the first landing at KSC, anytime I get my shuttle scroll out here.
The Dead Sea Scrolls? Okay.
Yes, like it. This was 41B, February 3rd,
Yep.
launched, February 11th, landed at Kennedy Space Center. And that was indeed Challenger's fourth flight with Vance Brand, Hoot Gibson.
Hoot was pilot,
Yeah. Stewart, McNair, and McCandless. That, of course, was Bruce McCandless's.
That was his
spacewalk.
MMU flight.
Yeah. And nobody remembers the second person to do anything, but that was Stewart. Also flew the MMU. And I always like saying, everyone knows Lindbergh was the first one to cross the Atlantic. Do you know who the second person to fly solo across the Atlantic was?
No.
5 years after Lindbergh, Amelia Earhart.
I was going to say Amelia Earhart.
For a big wad of cash, basically.
Yeah.
That's why they did these things. They were daredevils.
Oh yeah.
But they were doing it for the money.
money,
That's why she was on that trip that she lost.
Well, I was speaking with Hoot at one of the Space Fests. That's where he and I got to know each other a little bit better. And he told me that when they were making that approach to Kennedy, as soon as they were coming up on the coastline, that the first thing that came to his mind is, we're too high.
Oh, really?
We're going to fly right by this, he thought.
That was his first flight.
And that was his first flight. And with all the other landings that the shuttle had done, and we're all at Edwards, where you have runways that are 7 miles long. And
the great Vance Brand. We'll be thinking of him. He's out in Colorado, probably, or out, I think, where he lives.
I think he lives in Colorado.
But we're going to do a 50th anniversary of ASTP, Apollo Soyuz Test Project. 50th anniversary. We'll be doing something on that July 19th here. Yes, I'm already thinking past Scuttlefest already. So, and we've got a good new friend here in Jim Neihouse. I can tell photographers are good people. And of course, me being one, it might be an exception, but
we're got 3 here.
We got 3 here. But hope you're enjoying this.
I am very much.
I know they're eating it up. All this information
very much
here. Marty, go ahead.
Yeah, Bob Mayran is asking, what was something that was shot in space that surprised you once you got the footage back?
2 things. I've got two quick stories. One is I talked about the shopping list of shots. Well, during training, we'd always go over these with the astronauts and talk about them, and we wrapped up that session always, or that part of the session, with, okay, if ET comes knocking on the shuttle door, don't not shoot it because it's not on the list.
Okay.
And toward the end of Space Station, filming, I would always get the film off the shuttle, bring it to the lab, and I would be the first person to see it.
You would go on the shuttle to get the film?
Occasionally, yeah,
Uh-huh.
actually.
What'd that smell like?
Oh, it didn't smell very good, especially after 41D, Discovery's first flight. But I would see it at the lab as it's coming out of and we'd make an inner positive to protect it, and I'd view and approve the inner positive. And watching the inner positive, this shot of two little green blow up aliens floating in the space station showed up. And it was they just ran the film out on it, so it was like 2 seconds, 3 seconds long, and our editor liked it so much that she skip printed it or double printed it to extend it and use it in the film. So we got our alien shot that way. The other one that surprised me was I got a roll of film back from Expedition 1, the first space station crew, Bill Shepard
Mhm.
and
Two
Sergei.
cosmonauts.
Uh,
Kirkilov, right?
yeah, Kirkilov and it was Gennady, I think. I forget the third one. We were talking about it out there.
We've got Gennady's glove in our case out there.
Anyway, covert ops was what the film can was labeled as, and what they'd done is they'd taken the 3D IMAX film camera because they had to reposition a Soyuz on that flight. So they had to take it off one docking port, move it to another docking port. And so they put the camera in the Soyuz as they did the flyaway and shot the outside of the space station from the Soyuz, which they were not supposed to do. Ever. Do not do that. NASA didn't want them to do it. We didn't want them to do it. But, astronauts, they found out ways of doing things.
Because you could have lost the camera?
We could have lost the camera. They could have had an issue. Because if they'd had to deorbit, if they couldn't have docked, they would have had to deorbit. And they would just had to throw the camera out because you could not bring that camera back in that confined Soyuz capsule. No. I mean, you can barely get 3 people in there, not much less. But they had tested the camera for the window to see if it would fit before they did it. But the time came to do it, and they put the camera in there, but they had not done the test fit with the lens on it. And it wouldn't fit in the space they needed to fit in with the lens on. So Shep went back into the station, ripped the mirror off the bathroom, and stuck the mirror in the window, shot into the mirror, and then out the port, and got the shot of the space station. So that was probably one of our most surprising.
Wow. Ingenious as Shep, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, really. I'm thinking a mirror in there.
Yeah.
You could flip it around if you wanted to.
We fixed it.
Do anything you want in there.
Did IMAX own their own lab where all this work was? You contracted to a commercial business.
At that time, it was CFI, Consolidated Film Industries in Hollywood.
To process the film we're talking about, which is the hairy part. All right, as every photographer knows, it's souped up any film in there.
Yeah, and this is a continuous machine, so it doesn't stop. You once you start it, you feed the film in, and then you attach another roll, and it goes in. You attach another roll, and it goes in, and it goes up and down over rollers in the dark.
Into different chemistry.
Yeah.
At certain temperatures, of course.
It's very critical. It's all very, very critical.
So it was a roller transport machine.
Roller transport machine. And in Rolling Stones film, we were using another lab, I think. But Stones got something on one of the rollers. And so there was a flash of something that hit during several shots, and it wasn't supposed to be there, but because it was the Stones and they had all these lights up on the stage, it looked like just another light that was going on and off as part of the light show. So.
I know the risk. I ran a professional photo lab for many years, and I know that
Well,
sweatiest time. My palms were the sweatiest when there was film going through.
yeah,
The we had a roller transport processor, and then toward the end we switched to, because we were processing at that point not long rolls. We
Yeah.
were processing 35 millimeter
yeah.
or 120, 220 film out of backs. So we switched over then to dip and dunk hanger
Yeah,
machine.
yeah.
But they're not without risks either,
Yeah.
because a hanger can easily fall off
Yeah.
and go in there. I had my hand in C41 bleach
Oh, yeah.
more times than I would have cared to.
Well, think about running that 220 film that's 2 miles long, and you can't stop.
How does it come out the other end? How's it?
It goes through a drying cabinet,
Uh-huh.
and then it gets rolled up on a spool,
Oh, okay.
and then they insert blank leader in between the rolls, and then they just snip the blank leader, quick roll another core on there, wind it up, and then it goes out another. Yeah,
Well-
it's all very, and we always use CFI for space films, and it always went through the same processor. We had the same people. We didn't process on Mondays or Fridays, just because people were hungover on Monday and ready to get off work on Friday, and I was always there to supervise. And basically, after the film came out of the processor and all was good, I had a mission sticker from the mission that it was, and I put on the plate at the end of the processor. So by the time they wrapped up, they had 30 or 40 mission stickers on the end of this processor. And when they tore the processor apart,
Oh, that's
the
cool.
guy called me up. He says, "What should we do with this? I mean, it's fairly historical." I said, "Send it to Marcia Ivins in Houston, Texas, at the astronaut office." So she kept that plate in her office for several months, and as people came by the office, she would have them sign it. That flew that. So that plate is somewhere at IMAX. I really want to find out where it is and get it someplace that it gets seen. But it's all the missions and people who flew them and some who didn't. Astronauts signed that plate, and it's huge. It's 3 feet by 2
That's a
feet.
great story. I love
Yeah,
that because deal with memorabilia.
Yeah, oh,
So,
yeah.
wow, you don't
Yeah.
know it's out there. Shuttle mission stickers on the side of a processing machine for film, and
Yeah.
ends up in Hall of Fame Marcia Ivins' office.
Yeah,
And oh wow, that'd be worth a lot of money. Bob Mayran, thank you for your question. He's down in Miami. Doug Forrest is in the business out in Hollywood as a CGI
Mhm.
artist out there. He's also a fabulous pencil artist that I don't see his work in here at the moment, but he's got a question. He says, Maurice Binder always used to say film is the cheapest commodity.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, you look at it, especially when it comes to spaceflight. What was the cost they put on payloads to orbit and shuttle? $10,000 a pound.
Yeah.
Our film, one roll, 3 minutes of film weighed 10 pounds.
Uh-huh.
It's $100,000.
Huh.
But
What do
still,
they use today in the 21st? They still use film for some things, or what's?
And for IMAX, I keep bringing Chris Nolan up, but there's other J.J. Abrams and other famous film directors use IMAX film a lot. But
Ready to go. Ready to go.
now it's digital. Our last space movie, A Beautiful Planet, was all shot digital, with the idea of transmitting it back down or bringing the hard drives back, because they were just Soyuz to bring things back at that time, and not much space. Soyuz and Dragon, occasionally the Dragon capsule came back, before they had Crew Dragon. But what happened was one of the crew supply missions failed shortly after.
Right. Yeah.
What was that? CRS-5? I forget which one it was.
I forget the number.
We
but I do remember
we flew
the-
our gear up on CRS-4, and it's just anyway. Shortly thereafter, one of the SpaceX missions failed, and we couldn't fly anything back for a while because they were standing down to
Right.
figure out what happened, and so we had to transmit our 4K dailies, our footage, down via the broadband on station, which took 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and was never intended to do that. we basically had to get NASA approval to change an IP address on a computer on station to be able to make that computer think our hard drive was part of its system, and then they were able to trickle it down a few megabytes at a time, and we brought about 3.5 terabytes down, I think.
Amazing.
Well, I've enjoyed this conversation. You guys got any more questions out there? You're probably all searching around where you're going to watch the launch on your device, that computer, smart tab, whatever. We're just going to mosey on over a couple blocks away here.
Just walk out to the beach.
Yeah, that's right.
Walk out to Spaceview Park.
Right, Spaceview Park.
I hear you
Marty
consider it.
had to leave because he's going to go out and sell some shirts for us over there. And but seriously, I really enjoyed hearing these stories. I know everybody else has. Got to say hi to Yippee Kaye out there. They were asking, so alien movies, how was it filming those?
Alien movie.
Yeah, right, exactly. But we appreciate so many people that do stay curious with us. And I'm looking forward to seeing many of you at Shuttle Fest. Carlton Bailey, good luck with your shots tonight, CB. Elena Adahara, she's found us and is a daily watcher. Homemade documentaries, great questions that steered us into a lot of good, interesting things there. Michael Bruno, Daniel de Jong, can't wait to see you, my friend. He's from the Netherlands, and he's married to a Ukrainian lady, and he flies for Spirit, and he'll be at Shuttle Fest. Tom Celentano, great to see you. Steve Jokums, you'll meet Steve at Shuttle Fest, as well you'll meet Mark Thel, Mitch Rothman, Fox McLeod, thank you for your involvement today. Dean Babcock, Dave Stange, and I missed that Marky was watching there. Your little brother's on
Wasn't
there.
he good?
Little Mark.
Watching today. He tore himself away from his work post there to see his big brother on here. And you know Mark too, I'm sure in there.
Yeah.
He's a fabulous photographer too.
He sure is.
He's thinks outside the box on a lot of things. Seems to photograph a lot of waterfowl though up there in Lancaster.
Yeah, well, we don't have launch pads, so, you know. But
Something that flies,
What else
right?
do you shoot in Florida besides launches? You shoot birds.
So
he does. When he's down there, he's always over at the preserve. Or
Oh, yeah.
shooting things.
Yeah.
Good.
another great week of Stay Curious, my friends. Marty and I have done 1,260 episodes. We will be hitting 5 years on March 23rd. I don't really have anything planned for that because we got so much going on a daily basis here, but you will make it special by being involved anytime that you watch Stay Curious. Please tell your friends, hit the like button is what I've learned we want y'all to do, is hit the like button. That increases the algorithm. And tell your friends about us as you have been, and tell your friends now that you've talked to a real professional cinematographer here beside us, Jim Neihouse. We're going to have your wife on very soon, Leslie, talking about the public affairs job that she had working with the great Hugh Harris and Lisa Malone and other friends that I made there. So thank you so much.
You bet. My
for
pleasure.
your time.
Good
Great
job.
stories, Tommy.
I have
Thanks
just
for-
one more thing from yesterday.
Okay.
But Steve Bruno, if you're still out there, you asked yesterday what my favorite remote was, other than the one he showed yesterday. Well, that's it right there.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So I hope that helps you out.
Both clouds are going good and just faded out there. So good for that. You should have given me that slide to show there, buddy, but that's okay. We'll have Tom back. He's going to be chairing a panel that'll have Jim on it, and we'll probably pull Jim up there when we have Joe Tanner and John Grunsfeld talk about extravehicular activities. And I see no reason why you couldn't be up there talking about photographing those things. So thank you all for a great week. Hope it's warming up wherever you are, as we're at the end, getting at the end of winter here. And oh my gosh, it sure is spring break here. I drove behind Georgia coming in and had Michigan trailing behind me there, Stangy. I didn't see a Florida plate in 20 miles coming in here. You know what I'm talking
Oh yeah,
about,
yeah,
buddy.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks again to our guests here. Hope that you enjoy this content and please come back. Until next week, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us and go Crew 10 safe journey to the International Space Station today. Thank you, guys.